started. And, hopefully we anticipate a few more people joining. We had 90 people register for today's session. So we're excited that we have about 70, 75 or so participants already on. So thank you for joining early and getting all of your tech set up and, being ready to go. So thanks for participating. We know that, it's a different time and a busy time, different compared to what we're normally used to. So we appreciate you all being here and just being, a lively group, as I can already tell. So we know it's going to make for a great discussion. And we're excited to spend the next 2 hours with you. So this is the Peer Recovery Support Services Community of Practice. And today's meeting is a little different and unique, and we're excited to be bringing you today's content. It's going to focus on strengthening the connection between recovery community organizations and the mental health peer support agencies. So again, we appreciate you being here and, engaging in today's conversation. So we want to start off with a few introductions. So first, I'm Rekha Sridhara. I'm the Assistant Director of the Center for Excellence Project, which is a project of JSI. I'm leading today's meeting on behalf of Melissa Schammel, who is currently on maternity leave, but she's usually the normal face that you see at these meetings. So the Community of Practice is funded by the New Hampshire Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services, and we have a planning team that is, the ones that are behind all of these meetings and take the time to really think through, what the field needs and how we can best support all of you. So I want to just take a minute or two to introduce the planning team. So in addition to myself with the Center for Excellence JSI are my colleagues Adelaide Murray and Hannah Wessels. So hopefully they're waving to you. And then in addition to that, at the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services, we have Lindy Keller. With Harbor Homes, the PRSS facilitating organization, we have Cheryl Pacapelli and Polly Morris. And from Hope for New Hampshire, we have Keith Howard. I also want to give a special thanks to Susan Siegler and David Blacksmith. They've been working very closely with us over the last month and a half or so to just really help us plan today's meeting. Which is really focused on the mental health peer support agencies and how we can connect with them, including the recovery community organizations and what that collaboration might look like. I also want to thank Ayla Kendall and Thomas Grinley for their added support and just, being involved in the background as we planned today's meeting. So as I mentioned earlier, we had a little over 90 people registered for today's session. If you haven't already introduced yourself in the chat, please feel free to include your name, your organization, and anything else that you want participants to know about yourself. So given the number of people that we have on today's session, we're just going to review a few quick housekeeping details just to help us have an interactive and two-way discussion throughout the next 2 hours. And then also my colleague Adelaide Murray is available if you want to just talk through any details privately with her. So Adelaide is going to help with all of our tech issues and just can help, with any TA that you might need related to the Zoom features that are available and that we'll be using throughout today's session. So to chat Adelaide, basically you would just hover to the bottom of your screen. You'll see a toolbar pop up, and then there's a chat icon. Just click on the chat icon. You'll see a box pop up to typically the right-hand side of your screen, and you'll see a list of all of the participants. So you can choose to click on everyone, which would then send your message to everyone, or you can choose on a particular person's name. And in this case, if you choose Adelaide's name, then that will allow you to directly message her, and then she can help, problem solve things as you might have them throughout the meeting. So we are going to be using several of the participant features. So again, if you hover on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a participant icon, click on that, and then you'll see several different options that are possible. So there's a blue raise hand feature, there's a yes, no option, there's a thumbs up, thumbs down. So throughout the meeting, we'll be using these features to engage you more in some questions and, just want to get a heads up on, how you're doing, how you're feeling, and how you would respond to the questions that we're asking. So keep an eye on that. We'll note before each section as far as when we're going to use those features. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. And then in addition to that, for our conversations throughout, there'll be several opportunities to discuss and share with each other. And so we would ask that you use the raise hand feature. Again, that's the blue hand that you should see at the bottom of your participant list. We would ask that you please raise your hand or indicate in the chat when you want to ask a question or when you want to comment on something. We would then recognize that you have a question or that you want to make a comment. And at that point, we'll acknowledge you and then ask you to unmute yourself. We do want to try to keep the communication verbally versus through the chat, just recognizing the number of people. So if you have any questions about this, again, feel free to chat Adelaide and she can help you through all of this. So now just quickly to show you what the agenda looks like for the next 2 hours, we're going to start off with a self-care activity, and then that will be followed by an overview of the peer recovery, or the peer support agencies, and the recovery community organizations. We'll then spend the bulk of our time discussing the information that was shared by our presenters. So we're going to use our interactive features right now, so get ready for that. So the community of practice meetings have been going on for the last 2 or so years, and we typically have the recovery community organizations involved in those meetings. But this time around, with Susan and David's help, we've engaged many of the mental health peer support agencies. So I know that we have some new people on board. So just to get a sense of who is on today's session, can you please raise your hand? So that's the blue hand, or you can indicate yes. So there's a yes or a no option. So feel free to choose one of those just to give, give us all a sense of who is new today. So I'll give you a few seconds to do that.
I had a hard time hearing the last thing you said about with the hand raising.
Yeah, so if you can click on your participant icon, and then you'll see a box pop up with all the participants that are currently on the meeting.
Yep.
And then at the bottom of that, you'll see a toolbar, and there you should see a blue hand, basically. So you can either check on that if you're new to the community of practice, or you can check on either the yes option that's there as well to indicate if you're new. So, so I see a few new people, so that's awesome. We're glad to have you. So just want to get you used to those features because we're going to be using those a lot. And so for the new people that are on, I'll give you some background as far as what a community of practice is. But in addition to that, if you want to continue participating in our community of practice meetings, feel free to reach out to Adelaide. She can add you to our distribution list. We love new members, joining at any point, and you can choose which meetings you join based on the topic or your availability. So it's open to anyone, and we would love to have you participate, in future meetings. So for those of you that are new, a community of practice really refers to a group of people who share a common interest in something and interact regularly to learn how to do that, particular topic area or area of focus better. So for our purpose of the community of practice, this community of practice, we're really focusing on delivering peer recovery support services and just giving the opportunity for those that are working within recovery community organizations or that have an interest in the work that the recovery community organizations do as it relates to peer recovery support services, to just learn about new topics, but then also to help to connect each other to the work and to improve on how you're doing things. So as a member of the community of practice, you have several opportunities. So first are the typically in-person meetings. Right now we're remote and we're hoping that will change over time. But typically we do meet on a quarterly basis in person for about 3 hours or so. We also offer a Google group, which is more so like a listserv where people can share questions and resources. So that's another option that is available through the community of practice. And then we also follow up. We do share session recordings, which, by the way, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, this session is recorded. So we do offer session recordings, the PowerPoint slides, and then any other resources that might be shared during that particular meeting. And then lastly, individual technical assistance is available, as might be needed. And to do that, you would just visit the Center for Excellence website, which is nhcenterforexcellence.org. And then there you'll see a form that can be completed to request technical assistance. And TA can be requested related to really anything. And then at that point, we would review what you're requesting, and then we would get back to you on, what might that look like and how we might be able to help you. So in regards to our objectives for today's meeting, so by the end of today's meeting, we're really hoping that you'll be able to do 3 things. So first, we're hoping that you'll be able to describe the role of the mental health peer support agencies, in addition to the recovery community organizations, and being able to use that information to assist the individuals that you're working with that have co-occurring substance use and mental health disorders. Second, we're hoping that you'll be able to identify the services and supports that are available at each of the mental health peer support agencies and the recovery community organizations. And then third, we are hoping that you'll have the opportunity to discuss ways to increase opportunities for collaboration and referral among recovery community organizations and mental health peer support agencies in an effort to really help support the individualized needs of people that are being served. So now we are going to—
Can I just interrupt you really quickly to remind you and everybody that's going to speak today to verbally let Hannah Lessels know when to advance slides. She was waiting for that verbal cue, and that's why we just kind of jumped a couple of ahead there. So sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Sorry. So we are going to transition now into a self-care activity that's going to be led by Polly Morris. Polly is going to be using the raise hand feature, so just keep in mind some of the things that I had mentioned, as far as how to use those features. And again, if you can't find something, feel free to just chat Adelaide and she can walk you through it. So Polly?
There's the unmute, right? Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Polly Morris. I'm a project manager for Harbor Homes, which is the facilitating organization for the recovery centers that are state funded in New Hampshire, which there are 17. We had an activity, but it was an in-person activity. So now we're just going to kind of talk through some self-care. We had 2 community of practice meetings that we delegated to self-care and strategies to identify and avoid burnout among staff who deliver peer recovery support services. We had the first meeting in July where we had Kelly Riley and Sandy Coyle-Bouchard come and share their personal experiences with burnout. And Arthur Woodard from Connecticut came and presented on identifying burnout, and we talked through strategies to address this. And Arthur, I don't know if any of you remember, Arthur is a social worker where he writes those words of affirmations and things. So his name, Arthur Woodard. social, S-O-U-L, social workers. Do people remember that? Okay, so then we had, so we talked about burnout in that one quite a bit, and then we came together again in October to do a bit of implementation progress and a deeper dive into what centers were doing. And we asked Michelle Gagney from SOS and Karen Collins from Hope, and they both came and talked about what they were doing at their agency, at their recovery center. And then the planning team sent out these questions. Next slide, please. So we wanted to know, after we had these 2 designated meetings, what people had started to do. So we sent out questions to the centers, what recovery centers have done to implement self-care strategies on the administrative organizational leadership level and for individual peers, coaches, and volunteers. And then there's a couple of little definitions of self-care, making sure you have a healthy relationship with yourself. And then it reminds you and others that your needs need to be met. And that, part of our relationship with the people that we serve is all about their boundaries, our boundaries, their self-care, our self-care. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
And somebody give me a shout if I talk too fast. I have had coffee and I tend to do that. So next slide, please. So we asked some centers to tell us what they had done on the organizational level. And one of the centers said they had created a kindness chart. So this chart was to recognize and appreciate people who had a special work date, year anniversary, or a recovery date, or a birthday or whatever, and they gave small tokens of appreciation to recognize people on this kindness chart. And several of the people from these centers are on these calls, so you're going to recognize these things. And then another center, after we had these 2 community practice meetings, they took the self-care strategies and put them into their supervision, their weekly supervision, and they took some assessments. I know a couple centers have about vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, and triggers. And so they've been doing this ongoing in their supervision. Next slide, please. And then another center started using what they called a favorites spreadsheet. So they all talked about what their favorite chocolate was, or their favorite movie, or their favorite, little things in life. Well, how do you take your coffee? And so then, if somebody's having a tough day, rough day, or great day, everybody kind of knows what they like, and they can give them a little surprise sort of gift, Another center had a team building day off, and they all ate brunch together and played games. We all know that research shows that when you share a meal together, it really helps enhance relationships with our people. So what a great way to share some time. And then another agency started using what they call a checkup from the neck up. And they do that once a month in their staff meeting. And I wanted to know a little bit more about that and thought it would be really great to hear from the center that was doing the checkup from the neck up. So I asked Daisy Pierce. Daisy is the director of Navigating Recovery in the Lakes region, Navigating Recovery Center. And so Daisy, would you mind sharing a little about what the checkup from the neck up is?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. The checkup from the neck up is something that one of the staff members actually suggested we start doing. It's something that they had done before at another workplace. And basically we go around at supervision and we check in with each other about where everyone's at emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And we really, it's a time to be honest with each other and kind of learn a little bit about what's going on maybe outside of work besides what's just happening at work. Ironically, the first time we did this, we had a new staff member who, during the participation of this event, realized that this work was not the right work for her. So she ended up leaving her position at Navigating. And although we were sad to see her go, it was kind of a good thing in the sense that it gave her the opportunity to realize how challenging this work can be and that it wasn't a right fit before she got too invested and burned out. So although that was our first experience with the checkup from the neck up, we pushed on through and we keep doing it once in a while. Yesterday, actually, we just did it remotely. And so, through email, shared with each other where we're at. Yeah, and it's a nice way for us to learn about what's going on in our personal lives and be there for each other to support one another.
Thank you so much, Daisy. Yay for you guys over there at Lakes Region. And I think that, you know, a lot of the Zoom meetings like that I've been to, we are checking in with each other, you know, a little more than we normally would if we were coming together. We want to sit down, get going. People are like, how are you doing? So it's great. It's great. Thank you for sharing that. Some of the comments that we had from the leadership about their staff is staff love surprise gifts. Of course, who doesn't, right? There was one, so some of the slides were the leadership wanted to respect and encourage time off and provide trainings to empower, encourage workers to work as a team, which it sounds like a lot of you are doing. Next slide, please. So initial outcomes that we heard from leadership that they were positive, that the consistency and the you know, keeping things up and making sure you have those little gifts and making sure you know what people's favorites are. And if a new person comes on board, have they been involved in this? So keeping it consistent and remembering to purchase some of those things. Again, what we heard from staff is they love the surprise gifts. And one of the things I thought was really great about this self-care and how it can have the ripple effect is that I highlighted this, is that experiencing less conversation with staff who are feeling overwhelmed and more about how they enjoy their work. That's why we do this self-care. That's why we're practicing this, so that people aren't so fried that they can't, you know, share this thing. So open communication in regards to self-care. So being able to talk about it, being able to share. So awesome. And then we had one on the bottom that says, once in a while, we are just too busy. And again, this is why we do the self-care individually and as a team, so that when we are too busy, and yeah, we got to get this grant done by Monday, or this needs to happen now, we need to push through to 5 o'clock, you've developed those chops, those self-care chops for yourself and as a team. So that's why this is so important. Next slide, please. Some of the barriers, again, just staying prepared, staying consistent. So then we asked some of the individuals from the centers what they have been doing, and I'll just pull out a few. Somebody said, this presentation has all been kind of direct quotes. I wasn't going to change things around because we wanted to know. So somebody said, taking evening off for myself, and somebody else said, delegate duties more. And my favorite that got me the most excited about these results were that someone said, I took my first vacation since I started working. Like, how awesome is that? I don't know about all of you, but I haven't always worked in a professional environment, 9 to 5, paid vacation, personal time, sick time. Like, I worked in the restaurant business 25 years. You took a day off, you didn't make any money that day. You took a vacation, you didn't make any money. So like, that was really cool that somebody has the ability to take a vacation from their job and that they recognize, like, whoa, how cool is that, right? So anyway, next slide. So how has the organization supported their staff? Somebody wrote their boss ensures that I take a break. I love this one. They always allow for a good laugh during the day. And then the last one I saw was our team feels more like family than coworkers. Like, that's pretty cool. So this is where we were pre-coronavirus. After 2 communities of practice, this is where we were developing our strategies. And then, next slide. Boom, boom, boom. Coronavirus, there's chaos, there's fear, there's uncertainty. What do we do? Where do we go? We've got news flashes, news bulletins, we got tweets, we got Twitter, we got twits tweeting on Twitter. We've got craziness, insanity. Next slide, please. And boom, New Hampshire Recovery Community goes into action, and we've got 24/7 meetings, one-on-one meetings, group meetings, MAT services being provided. We've got support all over the place, telephone recovery supports. We've got, you know, you're hearing new things all the time about what these recovery centers are doing. You guys kicked into action and have shown that probably more than all the sectors that I've seen in the state and all social service agencies, you guys have done the best job and done it fastest. And so accolades to you. But there is a but. Next slide, please. As we say, you know, New Hampshire recovery community, amazing. But we need to remember there are things we can't control. So change the things I can. I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to wear my mask. I'm going to continue to ask for days off. I'm going to continue to take time for myself. I'm going to continue to practice these self-care. We're going to continue to have our organizational changes, knowing that I'm doing everything I can, and I'm at peace with that. I can't change, except where I cannot change. So self-care practices right now are more important, probably more important than they've been. So stay connected, stay with your people. And self-care does not have to cost a lot of money. It can be easy, it can be things you already do. And so I've asked 3 of our peers to share a little thing about how they practice self-care that's easy and inexpensive. Cheryl, would you share, Cheryl Peccapelli, would you share a little self-care practice that you have?
Well, sure. Thanks, Polly. I don't know if I would call it a self-care practice as much as a survival practice. So,
Right.
you know, and, you know, I was never good at self-care prior to COVID. So having COVID, you know, and being home, I live alone, and constant kind of chaos with the news. And as much as I try not to listen to the news, I still listen. And I one day a couple of weeks ago, I was up, had my coffee, started heading into my living room to get ready for like another 8 hours of Zoom meetings, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't walk into that room and do that same thing again. And instead of, you know, pushing through that, I took the day off. And it was a Tuesday, and I don't know what it is about Tuesdays, but I should probably take every Tuesday off, because it seems like Tuesdays are my worst day of the week. But after I did that, like I allowed myself a day without technology, I was okay the whole rest of the week. So for me, being able to model that for my team, knowing how hard this is and how it affects everyone differently, is a really good thing that occurred as a result of me saying, you know, I just can't do this for today. So that's my survival story.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you. And it's true. A lot of us, you know, take time off. What? Take a day off? I can't. I mean, I know myself, you know, I say, I'm going to take Thursday and Friday off this week. And I look at my schedule and go, oh, I can't do that. I got this phone call. I got this meeting. And then I say, oh, okay, I'll do it next week. I'll take Friday off. So I'm sure a lot of us do this. I just can't take a day off, right? So that, again, I want folks to focus on self-care. I asked Kyla Nardovi, one of my other colleagues here, to share what she does. Kyla, would you share?
Thanks, Polly. Hi, guys. I'm Kyla from Harbor Homes FO. I'm the project coordinator for AmeriCorps. So what I was learning was that I was not separating work from home, because how do you do that when you have to move your entire office home? And so this weekend, I took the time, sorry, I'm nervous, I don't know why. I took the time to kind of like put everything away work-wise, and I made it so it's really easily accessible. So like my file cabinet is under a little side table that has a big tablecloth on it. So when work is done, I shut that. I shut my computer, I hide my computer, so that my living room now becomes my living room again and not my office. So I was really having a hard time transitioning between the two. When do you start home life and when do you start work life? And what I was finding was that I was working all day long. Thank you, Molly. I wasn't stopping. I'd get up at 5, 6 in the morning and I start checking my emails, and then, you know, by 9 o'clock at night, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm still checking emails. Like, how do I fix this problem? Because I have suffered from burnout really bad before, and I don't want to do it again. So that's what I've done. I also have maintained my therapy. Some weeks I just do like a 15-minute check-in with my therapist, and that really helps me too. So yeah, remembering my self-care, remembering what's important and why I'm here, and being able to how am I going to maintain that has been really important to me. So separate work from home and maybe from school life too. I know a lot of us are teaching, or you guys are teaching your children too. And so it's, you know, maybe separating from that too, like now is mom time or now is dad time, you know. And it's figuring out little ways to separate these little compartments of our life when it's just one whole long day.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share, Polly.
No, thank you for sharing, Kyla. Thank you. And then I asked Doris Edmond. Doris is from the North Country Serenity Center up there. Doris, you here?
So when Polly asked me what I did for self-care, I just rattled off a couple things. It was my recovery. One of the biggest things is my jewelry making and selling, and hunting and camping with my family. But it didn't end there. I really had to think about what I do. And in my supervision, Angela Jones is our supervisor for our CRSW. She gave me this book. It's Overcoming Compassion Fatigue, and it's from the International Trauma Institute. And when I started looking at it, I realized, wow, am I really doing some really good self-care for myself? And I found out that there was a checklist in there. And in that checklist, there were some questions that I had to ask myself. And there are 20 questions, and 4 of them were no, and 7 were sometimes. And I'm thinking sometimes, wow, am I really doing a good job, or am I just running from life? So out of the 4 questions that were no, it was exercise regularly, social life is satisfying, I sleep well, and I take time off from work regularly. What I noticed and answered those questions, exercise was I don't have time, social life, I'm too tired, sleep 4 hours at best because I just got to think of all the things I have to do. And number 4 was take time off of work regularly. So that was a wake-up call. And what I started doing in that list was stopping, really stopping and looking at, am I in life, or am I just running through? How I'm thinking and feeling, are those actions really healthy? And no, the no's prevailed. And I had to think, was I damaging myself, and was I damaging the people around me? So what I did was I just backed up, I did a self-care assessment, and I had to give up on this push to do everything and be the one that had it done and give up control. So my jewelry making really takes me to a new level that to stop and think, because I don't. I just race and race and race. So my jewelry making and my fishing just takes me to a place that I really get to enjoy me and step back. And I have coping skills instead of survival skills. God, is that a great thing to have? Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Doris. Thank you. So just remember, folks, that, you know, staying in your own lane, and continue the things that, you know, change the things you can and accept the things we can't. Thanks, everyone.
And Polly, we have one comment in the chat from Rebecca Pearson, and she mentioned that Liz Seaman at KSD does a daily check-in with either yoga, meditation, readings, etc., and that it's pretty great.
Yes, I do know that about Liz. I've listened to it, and I know that Reality Check does a little check-in up at their center too. So that's awesome. I'm sure there's lots of centers on here that do lots of things, and we can share some of those resources on the Community of Practice Google group.
All right. Thank you, Polly. That was awesome. So now we're going to go into an overview of the mental health peer support agencies. So we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Susan Siegler and David Blacksmith to provide us with that overview.
Thank you. Good morning. This is David Blacksmith. I'm the Executive Director for On the Road to Wellness in Manchester and Derry. Susan, do you want to introduce yourself? You there?
Yes.
There you
I'm the Executive Director of Stepping Stone and Next Step Peer Support and Respite Centers in Claremont and Lebanon.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to go through these slides, and there'll be a slide at the end, kind of wrapping this up, and it's going to hover over that, and Susan's going to share pretty much what we do in terms of how much training and investment we put into the folks that we essentially employ, and as well as our members, you know, so that we can do intentional peer support effectively. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I apologize, I'm not going to be as animated as Polly. I have only had 1 cup of coffee, so I need more than one to get that animated. So Polly, you've done nicely to wake me up, all right, and keep the energy going first thing in the morning. But I'm going to take us all up on a hot air balloon. I'm going to get up about 10, 15,000 feet. So I'm going to take kind of an overview, and hope that everybody just forgives me that I will simply speak about our peer support agencies, what we do, why we do it, how we do it, in such a way, assuming that everybody on this, in the room, so to speak, has no clue what we do. So I don't mean to insult anybody, but that's probably the best way I know how to approach it. Y'all good with that? You don't even have to say okay. So anyway, so yeah, peer support, mental health peer support in New Hampshire. We have 8 agencies with 15 different locations throughout each region of the state. This slide here just essentially shows you where they are. You know, we have respite also additionally in there, in one in Nashua, one in Keene as well as up in Claremont, and those, yeah, so things are a little bit different literally today, this particular day, but I'm talking in generalities of what we do on a normal basis. And so we are funded by the mental health, you know, the mental health system. We're part of the system, and that's how we're primarily funded. And yeah, so we cover, you know, pretty much every part of the state. So next slide, that's the simple one. So a lot of times when it comes to, I know I bump into this. I'm assuming that all my colleagues in the peer support world here, go back to where you were. Get back to that other slide. Where are you going? There we go. All right. So don't mind me. I can be animated a little bit. So a lot of people have really asked the questions like, what in the world do you guys do anyway? Type of thing. So this slide, and I'm going to have to apologize to Sherry Mead. Sherry Mead is the founder of Intentional Peer Support, and it was brought to my attention that this is not the most flattering picture of Sherry, so I'll have to send her some apologetic gift in the mail for doing this today. All right, but keeping it in context, because this was actually a video clip, a little short interview that she had someplace that she was sitting on some stairwell, and it's probably personally my favorite video of her because of what she explains about what really is this intentional peer support. So that's what I want to share with everybody today. You know, so what kind of mental health peer support do these 8 agencies in 15 locations, what is it that they have to offer? Well, Sherry, when she was asked in this interview, one of the comments she makes, and most of these are exact quotes, I admit there's a little bit of editing in there to make it simple, but she essentially says, you know, peer support in general, she says, I don't think that there's any particular purpose but just to get together and commiserate, share ideas, or whatever it is. I think we'd all agree with that, you know, peer support can be anything, anywhere, and doesn't necessarily even have a particular purpose. It's where people get in together and chit chat and talk and whatever. The interviewer asked her, you know, what is this whole intentional thing? And she says, well, it's intentional means to challenge each other, to open possibilities that didn't exist before. That's the intention. It's part of building a conversation that's energizing, that's educative, that's creating new ways of thinking. That's essentially what all of our peer agencies do. We work, you know, I appreciate what there was something Susan said not all that long ago, you know, and I really appreciate what she said was that intentional peer support may be simple, true, but yet it's very complex because we're seeking to unearth untold stories. We're seeking to have a conversation and building on a relationship that both parties are learning from one another. And that's where it's part of that conversation. It tends to be energizing, and we're both learning on both sides, and it's creating new ways of thinking. I probably like this next quote from her the best is like, a lot of peer support isn't intentional, so it's sometimes good and sometimes not so good. And I think we can all agree that even when we're intentionally trying to be peer supportive, sometimes those things, those conversations, those interactions are great, and sometimes they're not so great. They go a little bit south, you know. So, but bottom line, bolded on the bottom, is intentional peer support works well with people that are wanting to be in a specific conversation that's going somewhere. And that's what all of our peer support agencies do. We strive for that one particular piece. We don't try, we work diligently. Again, peer support may be simple, but it's complex. What we work diligently is to create a space and time, and using different creative ways to do that. So the individuals that are coming to our centers, or even now through our Zoom groups or our Facebook groups or whatever it is we're doing, when we're doing out in the community and visiting folks, you know, meeting people out in the community, whatever that might be, intentional peer support legitimately works well when they're part of a conversation that's actually going somewhere. It's not just chit chat, not just getting together, not just hanging out at the bar, not just hanging out in the backside of a pickup truck, things of that nature. That's what we strive to do. And Susan will talk about the training part of that, of how important that is, and takes that simple thing, it takes the complexities of intentional peer support and therefore makes it simple from there. So that's essentially what we have to offer. Again, this is from the 15,000 foot above the air view of that. How that's fleshed out in each of our centers may look a little bit different, but this is the core. This is our core value. This is what we're striving for. Next slide, please. So that's the kind of service that we provide. We're providing a service so that people can come together, not just a place to hang out, not just a place to chit chat, not just a place to, you know, and although those things happen, obviously, and we encourage that, but our focus, you know, is to work on something so people can work on their recovery, find avenues, tools, whatever, for their own sense of wellness. And some of the services that all of our agencies provide, and by the way, you know, these are pretty much all the same for all of our 8 agencies and all sites, but there also are very specific things that each of us do that may be a little bit different, and that during the Q&A time afterwards we can maybe address those things. But for now, one of the questions that I get a lot, at least in our agency, you know, is that, you know, what about the money thing? Does it cost anything? Do I need insurance? We are absolutely non-clinical. There are no appointments necessary. We don't collect any insurance. There are no fees, no co-pays. Even our transportation is absolutely free. We provide transportation to and from our centers to their homes, so that individuals who don't have access to be able to get peer support, that they can get it. We provide groups on a daily basis, and they all have different topics. And even when we plan a particular topic, sometimes based on what's happening in the group, it might take on a completely and utterly different flavor and topic based on what the needs of the individuals may be in the room. We do one-on-ones. We're just hanging out, 2 people sitting at the table, or, you know, sitting on the couch, or hanging out in the kitchen type of thing, and just really doing peer-to-peer work. You know, again, participating in a conversation that's going somewhere, meaningful, helpful, type of thing. We do that. We do community educational events. We do that monthly. We, all of us, work diligently to be creative and giving our members and staff opportunities to participate in events that will educate them. And it's not just math and science type of thing, and it's not always just mental health either. It's just how, you know, I'm being lack of creative in my head in my conversation this morning, but I'm just going to let you figure out what education means, because I can't think of a good scenario in my head right now. And we do the field trips, and I'm jumping down to fun activities that's on that slide there. We do a number of stuff that's just plain fun. I mean, we try to create a sense of community. That's where the community building part is in there. Folks don't want to always just come in just to always be working. We also create opportunities to have fun, community, a sense of community within a community. type of thing. But at the same time, when we're doing those fun activities, I promise you this, we are actively involved in creating opportunities in space and looking for those opportunities to connect and really share one another's worldview, to really be able to understand a person's untold story, build on the relationship. Let's say we're all hanging out at the park at a lake somewhere during one of our summer things that we might do. Well, there's times where we're just having fun, but at the same time, two of us are sitting in our lazy chair, so to speak, or in our Adirondack chairs, having a conversation that's actually leading somewhere. So we take all of those opportunities to do such a thing. And we serve our local communities. We get involved in we believe very strongly that part of a person's mental health and wellness isn't always just about me, but it's also giving ourselves away to others. And so we create opportunities to serve our communities, our local communities as well. We do that on a regular basis. And lastly on our list, and again, this is not an exclusive list of the services we provide, but 365 days a year, primarily in the evenings, we provide warm lines. There are, toll-free numbers that anybody can call and get the support, just have somebody to talk to, just someone to be listened. And folks are trained in that. Again, it's not a casual type of thing. So we provide that as well. All right, next slide. So what can people expect to experience at a peer center? Well, I admit that this is a slide that I created because it's something that a trainer had once had really breathed this into me some years ago. We was talking about our individual and our collective, I call it our individual and collective job description. And she said, is what we do in our peer support agency is to create and maintain a learning environment. Creating that and maintaining it. It's sometimes that's difficult, sometimes it's challenging, and sometimes it's just plain fun and enjoyable. But we work diligently to create and maintain a learning. Again, we're not learning about math and science, we're learning about mental health, wellness. We're learning about how to cope. We're learning about how to express our feelings in a far better way. We're learning about how to trust one another. We're learning so many different things. And that's kind of our underlying mantra is unlearning learned helplessness. I think we would all agree that most of us have at some level, or another, have experienced, whether it's self or others around us, that, hey, there is a sense of, helplessness within us. I had one of the trainers when I first got involved in this industry, Laura. I don't think she's on the phone right now, and I wouldn't care if she was, but she really made it interesting for me to try to teach me what intentional peer support was about this whole unlearning learned helplessness. She created a scenario for me. She just looked at me unexpectedly and she just said, comes up to me and says, "Can you help me look up a phone number?" And I'm like, okay, I see what this is, in my head. Looking up a phone number is easy. I could easily do that, look up the number and move the person on because I'm really busy right now. But the whole exercise was really like, why is this person asking me to look up a number? What is the untold story behind this looking up a phone number? Is it, I don't know. And so that interaction between myself and the trainer, Laura at the time, was 15, 20 minutes of going back and forth, and she was relentless and I was relentless. By the way, she won. But nonetheless, and that's what we aim to do, is to come alongside individuals and to create opportunities for conversations. Again, those conversations that are going somewhere, to create that learning environment, hopefully maintaining that, and unlearning that learned helplessness that we have over time. Next slide. Again, from the 15,000 foot view above all of this, not being individualized. Intentional peer support in the mental health world absolutely saves New Hampshire, saves us money. I mean, we're talking about New Hampshire. I think this is true everywhere. But Peter Starkey, who is the executive director out in Keene, and Knock Area Peer Support Agency, gave me some numbers. He's very well versed in this. But for instance, New Hampshire Hospital, The estimate is it costs about $2,500 a day per person to be at New Hampshire Hospital with someone who's having an acute problem with mental health. The average stay is 21 to 40 days. So if you just do the math, that's what? Somewhere between $52,000 to $100,000 per person. That's a lot of money for one person to get the help that they need in the hospital. Necessary? Maybe true. But for example, how does peer support play a role in helping to save dollars? Well, it's hard to monetize sometimes what we do in the peer centers, you know, the kind of cost per person served kind of thing. But one place that we know for sure that we can monetize is our peer respites. That is clearly 100% hospital diversion, where so an individual who's like having a crisis, but they don't want to go to the hospital, is going to cost a bundle, and they're probably going to be there a whole lot longer than they want to be. But let's say they go to respite. Well, last fiscal year, we served 115 people, you know, in our last fiscal year. And again, if you could do the math based on the numbers above, that's a savings of anywhere from $6 to $11 million. All right, so peer support saves the state a lot of money and is extremely helpful for our individuals. All right, so I'll be quiet now. Next slide. Yeah. So again, that's the Learjet ride over who we are, what we do, why we do it. It's a very broad view. I'm sure there's probably some questions. I see some stuff on the chat, but I'm not reading it. Susan, I'm going to let you take this time on this slide to talk about our training so folks will understand how much we invest in people.
Thank you, David. And thanks everyone for spending time with us today. I'm going to spend just a little time talking about our staff development framework. And the foundation of our co-learning is based on intentional peer support, or IPS, and Wellness Recovery Action Plan, or WRAP. And although we've used IPS and WRAP curricula for many years, we've spent the better part of the last 5 years building capacity within the peer support agencies to offer IPS and WRAP trainings based on our needs and at a significant savings. And because of this commitment to professional development for our PSA staff, we have 3 IPS trainers and 2 advanced level WRAP facilitators who facilitate all our statewide trainings, as well as trainings that are specific to our programs. In 2017, we opened up training opportunities to certified peer specialists in the community mental health centers, New Hampshire Hospital, NAMI, and others. And over the last year or so, we have responded to requests from folks from the greater community, including some from the recovery community. Our statewide trainings include 6 to 8 days of IPS core, where participants learn the tasks and principles of IPS, examine assumptions about who they are, and explore ways to create relationships in which power is negotiated, co-learning is possible, and support goes beyond traditional notions of service. In order to become certified in IPS, a participant then attends 1 year of quarterly co-reflections, where we share what has gone well within the context of IPS and our relationships, and ask for feedback on other possibilities. And people certified in IPS can facilitate IPS groups within their organizations for their members. To maintain IPS certification, we attend 2 days of IPS refresher every 2 years. And our WRAP training track begins with 2 days of WRAP Seminar 1, which is an introduction to WRAP, where folks learn to incorporate WRAP into their personal wellness. And it's designed to be interactive and provide a broad foundation for building a peer workforce. And people who complete WRAP Seminar 1 and are recommended by the trainers have the opportunity to attend a 5-day RAP seminar too, which prepares them to facilitate or co-facilitate RAP classes and gives them the experiential learning environment based on mutuality and self-determination. If you are a RAP co-facilitator, you have a couple of opportunities to attend half-day RAP Connections, which is an opportunity to chat with your fellow co-facilitators and the trainers to do some, get some feedback and guidance. And to maintain your RAP facilitator certification, folks attend 4 days of RAP refresher every 2 years. And for the PSAs, in addition to those statewide trainings, we also provide 4 days of peer respite training every year, where we discuss the IPS tasks and principles within the context of crisis and use role plays and discussion to get a better understanding of shared risk and responsibilities, conflict, multiple truths, alternate realities, self-harm and suicide, coercion, and talk about the victim, persecutor, and rescuer roles. And then we also offer 1 day of warm line training every year. And in that training, we explore ways to incorporate IPS and RAP into our support on the phone. And we also do, once a year, we have a 1-day PSA conference. It's typically held at the Grapponi Center in Concord. And we build that agenda based on what our peers are looking for and get their feedback on that. And beyond that, we also have the capacity to provide other trainings on trauma and addictions, self-harm and suicide, conflict resolution. So that is what we're doing for staff development in a nutshell.
Great, thank you, Susan and David. So next slide. We were intending to take questions right after the overview presentations, but in an effort to just keep us on track with time, we are going to move this section to later on in the meeting. So you'll still have the opportunity to ask questions and make comments, but we'll just do that a little bit later in the meeting. So we can now go to the next slide, and Polly and Cheryl are going to provide an overview specific to the peer recovery support services associated with the recovery community organizations under the peer facilitating organization. Polly and Cheryl?
You want to go back to the first slide? So New Hampshire Peer Recovery Support Services, this is a very broad overview. Hi, everybody, it's Polly again. Thank you, David and Susan, by the by. The PSAs are an underutilized service in New Hampshire, and they offer so many wonderful groups and so many opportunities for really growing your community. So yay for the PSAs. I love our Monadnock Peer Support Agency. So New Hampshire Peer Recovery Support Services, and there are people on this call that can probably answer more in detail when you meet them from your region. We are funded through the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and our funding is provided through New Hampshire Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services. Slide. So what is recovery from addiction? There's lots of different definitions. You're in recovery when you say you are. Recovery equals wellness. But the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, has this definition: a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach their full potential. I don't really like the full potential stuff, but and this I think would be for the PSAs and the recovery, the RCOs. So next slide, please. So peer recovery services in New Hampshire include, they're delivered by people with lived experience with addiction and recovery, And we know that studies demonstrate that peer recovery support services have been linked to enhanced engagement, positive treatment outcomes, and the elevation of peer support as a promising practice. So here we are at the next slide. Recovery coaching and telephone recovery support services are what is funded by the state through that SAMHSA grant in New Hampshire. We have 17 recovery centers, and I will show you a map. We offer peer recovery coaching and telephone recovery support services are the two funded services. The coaching here, and this is a very broad definition, is services provided by trained community members who serve as guides and mentors to individuals seeking or in recovery to assist them. So we develop a recovery plan or a wellness plan and figure out how to help folks start their recovery, get into their recovery, stay in recovery, and we work with them all along. So I love what David said about coming alongside, because I think that's what we do is we are walking the path of recovery, whatever path that is, because we all embrace multiple pathways. So our coaches are trained through the Recovery Coach Academy. It's a foundational training. It's 30 hours, I could be wrong, 30, 32. It includes lots of different modalities, motivational interviewing, self-care, boundaries, ethics, stigma and language, and then that's the basic foundation, similar to what your intentional peer support week training would be. And then we have other trainings that someone would take, and we can talk more about these offline, to become a certified recovery support worker, which is the New Hampshire credential. The Recovery Coach Academy just gives you that, like I said, that foundation. So next slide. Telephone recovery support services, we do trainings for folks. This is similar to what your warm line would be. Right now with the COVID virus, you can get a hold of somebody 24/7 at our recovery centers. This is used for some of our parenting programs. There's a part of our curriculum that has participants called each week, and you can call anytime to a center and someone will speak with you or give you some, they're resource brokers. Next slide. Mutual aid groups. So all the centers is why I have on the bottom, contact your local provider, because all the centers offer different groups from multiple pathways. 12-step community, smart recovery, refuge recovery, all recovery meetings. So there's multiple things happening in your community. Go ahead and keep going right on, Hannah. Healthy living groups. So similar to what David and Susan shared about, activities that the centers do. I remember Monadnock Peer Support Agency, they go to the beach every year. We have certain things that we do too, and some of the pictures you see are activities that have been done by centers. There's a whitewater rafting. We did some rock climbing. And then here's an activity at the end of one of our parenting groups that was just a really cool connecting activity. So we have yoga and creative arts and crafts and, all sorts of different activities for not only individuals, but for families and communities. Healthy living groups. So next slide. Who are people in recovery? I put that on there because recovery is such a broad term. So when people say they're in recovery, which by the way, I did not introduce myself as a person in long-term recovery, which for me means I have started a lifestyle that's changed for health and wellness since 2007. So people in recovery, who are they? Next slide. They are our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, our brothers, our aunts, our uncles, our bus drivers, our post office workers, our lawyers, our veterinarians, etc. You get the point. Addiction doesn't discriminate. Recovery is anybody too. So next slide. Here are some people in recovery in New Hampshire that some of you may recognize. In the center, we have Miss Cheryl Pacapelli, who we heard from already this morning. This was at her house. The RCOs have an annual picnic, and this year happened to be Cheryl's 30-year anniversary. So here are some folks from different centers. Next slide. I love showing slides of real people in recovery. And here's some more folks in recovery. There's the reality check banner there. That was a Recovery Coach Academy training that we finished. And then we have Jim Wolfing, and the three pictures of myself, Jim Wolfing and Dean Lemire, and they some of our facilitators that have come and done some Recovery Coach Academy and harm reduction trainings, et cetera, et cetera. A couple of center logos. Next slide. This is a quilt that Cheryl made from all the t-shirts from the recovery centers that were in play at that time. And here's all the centers in New Hampshire, a map, the years they all came into play. We're all over the state. We'll have definite contact information for you. And I think that is pretty quick to the end of my very broad presentation. Each center, again, you know, has similar activities and similarities and differences, just like the PSA. So we are very similar in our mission of service. And I think that the RCOs and the PSAs, as I said already, are very underutilized and necessary to integrate into services to really achieve the wellness that we want in our communities. So enough from me. Thank you all. I think we're done. Are we not, Hannah? Is there another slide?
Polly, you have a few slides just in regards
the
to
resources. Our resources, yeah. So these are some resources that you have in your PowerPoint that you can click on and you can get different, these are national resources and local resources. So Faces and Voices for Recovery is a really great national recovery community. I don't need to go through all these. You can feel free to just look at them as you wish. Next. Next slide. More resources, some local New Hampshire resources and some SAMHSA resources. The next slide. When a loved one has a problem, I put in here because, you know, we all do this work, but when it's somebody really close to us, it's hard. So if a loved one has a problem, speak up and talk to them about it. Take care of yourself. Like, don't take the blame for that. Don't take the, it's all my fault. I made them do this. Encourage them to call a recovery center or reach out to the doorways. As I said, right now the recovery centers and the PSAs have the warm line. So you can get a hold of some live person. Thank you.
Thanks, Polly. All right, so now we're going to spend the remainder of our time together, about 50 or so minutes, 55 minutes, to really engage in a discussion based on what you've heard. So Lindy Keller will be our moderator, and she is going to just kind of cover, you know, just the information that you've heard related to the peer support agencies as well as recovery community organizations, but also talk a little bit about referrals and collaboration and, you know, all that good stuff. So just a reminder, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raise hand feature. That will help Lindy know who wants to speak. And then if you don't have that feature available or can't find it, feel free to just mention in the chat that you would like to speak, and we can address you in that way as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Lindy, and we look forward to your questions and comments.
Okay, hi everybody, and while I'm introducing myself, you can go ahead and start putting in some chats or raising your hand so we can get to you right away. We're on a little bit of a tight time frame. Again, my name's Lindy Keller. I work for the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services and have been a part of planning for the development of peer recovery support services across the state, as well as overseeing the contracts that help to fund them. And I have to say that it's one of my favorite parts of the job is working with the recovery community. The development has been wonderful, and it's truly been a partnership between the state and the providers. So I just want to say that up front. I also want to add, we asked Polly to kind of rush through her portion because we were already behind schedule. So I want to highlight one thing that she had on the screen but didn't mention. The resource for the Recovery Hub would be the place where you can find where all the centers are and click on them to get their contact information or go to their websites to find out what they're doing in their centers. So that's one you want to highlight once this all gets posted and you can get those slides and those links.
Thank you, Lindy.
So what I'd like to do is divide this up according to the categories that Reka mentioned and spend just a few minutes on the first ones. First, I wanted to find out if anybody has any questions that they wanted to direct to the PSAs, either to the two presenters, David or Susan, or any of the other directors that are on there. Specifically, if any of the mental health peer directors want to add anything about their services or how they provide them, or if anyone else has a particular question for them.
Wendy, we did receive a question in the chat from Eric Moran.
Yes, I'm going to save that, Reka. Yeah, Reka, I'm going to save that till the consultation part. So
okay, great.
I've got it. But I do see a hand from Susan McEwen.
I wanted to ask David if the 115 people that he mentioned were from one location or for their total 15 locations.
That 115 would represent all of the peer respites and from individuals coming from all over the state. That's just a collective number, not from one agency in particular. All of our peer respites, they're open to anybody throughout any region throughout the state, and to fine tune the geographic area as to where individuals came from, you'd have to extrapolate that from each of the individual agencies that run those respites, but that 115 is a collective number.
Thank you.
And that's specifically for respite at the 3 centers that are across the state, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from other peer support centers that want to share something? We have a question from Daisy. Do you want to ask it, Daisy, or do you want me to read it?
Sure, I can ask it. I was wondering if there's anybody here from Corner Bridge in Laconia. Okay, doesn't seem like it. So then the second part of my question doesn't apply. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the PSAs? We're going to talk a little bit more when we get down further on how the 2 kinds of centers can coordinate and involve some training issues in that question. But is there anything else specifically about their services or? Okay, if not, we do have Ayla, who works for the Bureau of Mental Health, saying that she can send information on the services in the Laconia region. So Daisy, you can watch for that. All right, so are there questions about the recovery community organizations? So we've got loads of people here from those organizations. If you want to share something specific that you don't think was covered in the presentation that you're doing, or if anyone has any questions for any of the peer support, the recovery support centers. Hand raises if you want to just speak up.
Wow, quiet group today.
Wow, we started out to, oh, Ayla, go ahead.
Hi,
Ayla,
everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I was just curious as to, and I know there was some comments I think that I saw in the chat at some point. As most of us know, co-occurring disorders are very prevalent right now. And I'm just curious, how do, and we may get here in a different part and that's okay, but how do recovery centers address the mental health piece, and you know, how do they coordinate with different types of services that can help kind of that side of their needs?
So I think we're going to talk more about the coordination in a minute, but I think the first part of your question is there anyone from any of the directors from any of the recovery centers, or Polly, or someone from the FO that wants to speak to how they deal with people who come into their centers who also have mental health issues? Don't be shy, folks.
Well, I can speak from Plymouth Area Recovery Center. We fortunately have mid-states right in the same office with us. And for me, I quickly can determine, probably just because I'm so old, you know, if someone needs the mental health services as well, that's almost like the first referral that I'm going to make for them. And only because I personally feel that it's hard to address their recovery if their mental wellness isn't part of that when they disclose, you know, to me as we're talking. So that's what I do. I don't know if that's what you're looking for an answer.
I could address this for Till and to Lindy if you like.
Sure, go ahead, Michelle.
So we take a pretty holistic approach, and I would say conversationally, usually on first appointments, and really look at the addiction health being primary. Usually the mental health stuff comes in after some type of crisis intervention. Where I have found like Corner Bridge to be super helpful is kind of like consulting over the phone, because there are a lot of times we have people that definitely we can see that there are mental health issues, but they're not interested in accessing those kind of supports yet. So we found that the peer approach works almost better sometimes, but we also do have a partnership or a collaborative relationship with Health First, and like they have like multiple mental health, behavioral health specialists, LADACs, within their practice. And then we have others that are in the community, because we always tell people to look at the counselors as kind of like a girlfriend. You don't marry the first one you meet often, because a lot of times people have such bad experiences. So I feel like the mental health is often part of it. I think the most difficult cases for us are those co-occurring that are in recovery from meth addiction and have a lot of paranoia issues and a lot of severe anxiety around that. And that's again where I haven't necessarily been able to, like, you know, influence people to make those appointments with Corner Bridge, but they've been there every time I picked up the phone and said, this is what I'm going through with this person. I can't get them to mental health professionals. What do you suggest? So we've been very happy, actually. I think it was Robin that I talked to over there quite a bit.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So any other centers that want to chime in here on anything different? I think. All right, Ken, you had a question. Do you want to call it out? Ken Lewis?
Hi, Lindy. Yes, thank you for having us. And especially me, troublemaker as me, I've been pretty quiet. Yeah, I asked a question about the doorway connection with the RCOs, and in like Nashua and Manchester, it's designed a little differently because they're not attached to a hospital. They're attached to the RCOs. So Jessica Parnell from Revive Center in Nashua privately contacted me through the chat group, and we've been talking. So we've worked that out. So
I think it's still a good question for everybody. So, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it, because the doorways and the RCOs are two very separate entities. The doorways have some peer support workers that work at them, but they really fall more under a clinical setting. And they're access points to get people to wherever they need to go to. They will refer people to local RCOs if that's the appropriate level of care, but they also do evaluations and get people connected to treatment as well. And I will say for Manchester and Nashua, while they are currently still under contract with Granite Pathways, they will be moving to hospital settings by the end of next month. So they'll all be associated with a hospital by mid to late May. So there's a partnership, but they are not administratively connected. Kathleen, did you want to say something or were you just clapping? Kathleen Haggerty?
Sorry, was clapping.
Okay, just checking. Didn't want to cut anybody off.
Lindy, can you clarify? So you said the doorways and the RCOs are not one and of the same.
Absolutely not, no.
Right, okay.
The RCOs are independent organizations, much like your peer support agencies are. However, they do get referrals from the doorways and they refer to the doorways. So that's a two-way thing. And I do want to say that what we're dealing with here are the agencies, the recovery community organizations are all peer run and peer led. There are peer recovery support workers that work within other clinical agencies, and the doorways do hire them and have recovery support specialists who interact with the clients that come to them, but they are not the RCOs. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. That's the, okay, Polly had a question in the chat too, but we're going to get to that when we get more to the consultation. Is there anything else for the RCOs specifically? Any other questions? All right, so the next thing we wanted to talk about was referrals, and I think that Michelle and Kathleen already mentioned that somewhat, but I wanted to just sort of initiate a discussion. This isn't so much questions, it's really a discussion about what you all feel from either one of these two sister agencies, the PSAs or the RCOs. What would be the opportunities or the best ways to make referrals back and forth between you? Does my question make sense? Just nod if it does, please, or shake your head if it doesn't. Okay. So then I'm inviting, okay, Peggy, do you want to weigh in on this one? Peggy Verney?
But actually my question or statement was for the previous slide. It was about referring people to the doorway, which would be Laconia for us. For that person that you described prior with mental health issues and substance abuse, and you talked about describing someone who had high anxiety and meth issues, and if we send that person to the doorway in Laconia, what can we expect for the outcome for mental health? Are they only going to look at the substance issues, or could that person get help for both?
So that's a question really more for the doorways. They are supposed to be an access point for substance use disorders. However, they do full evaluations on people, so they would identify mental health issues and make referrals to the appropriate mental health center, most probably. But that's not specific to our RCOs.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Lindy, you like,
so any thoughts on how folks, what works well in making referrals for the other peer support agency, whether it be the mental health or the substance use disorder?
For us, I would say pick up the phone.
Are people doing it already?
Yeah, I mean, Lindy, this is Michelle again in Tilton. I would say yes, we are doing that already. And it's really picking up the phone with our participant to make that call so that they're not blindsided or, you know, I was thinking about that individual walking into the doorway. Like I always used to be at Lakes Region General Hospital. I haven't been to where they moved it. But I mean, it's an overwhelming experience. I've gone in there with somebody and you go to a reception desk, you stand there, they call people over the phone. You end up sitting, waiting, hoping that there's chairs to sit with somebody, waiting for somebody to come down. I mean, it was very anxiety producing experience, I would say. So when I think about referring back and forth through peer agencies, anything that can be done to mitigate the the fear or the concern or the idea of doing something new or meeting new people, like mitigating that as much as possible to do that warm handoff is great. For us, it's like picking up the phone with the participant, making the call with them on speaker. And as long as that works, I mean, it works in Laconia. I don't know about the other agencies, but then, you know, once we get the release too, we can kind of give any backstory that we think is pertinent.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any other centers in other regions, either PSAs or RCOs?
Yeah, I'd like to just simply speak on the peer support. I know on our end, it really is, it's as simple as that is ours. Making a referral to us is simply picking up the phone and making a phone call. You know, I know that a number of individuals on our ACT teams here in Manchester, they regularly, I won't say consistently, but regularly pick up the phone and they will call when they have a particular person that they're working with. They have some issues of isolation type of thing. They obviously ask that person, hey, let's talk about peer support. They have a script they actually work with that we gave them, so that they can be consistent. And then they essentially say, is it okay for us to call the peer support agency? And then they make the connection with us, and then we start the relationship on the phone. We start connecting with that individual, and hopefully it doesn't take too much time to break down those fear barriers or whatever it might be about, connecting and or seeing us or coming to the center, or we don't even mind going to them as well. So we will actually do that. So either way works. But yeah, I'm talking too much, but it's a phone call.
This is great. Thank you, David.
This is Mike from
anyone else?
This is Mike from Navigating Recovery in the doorway. I put it in the comments, but actually the individual that does the assessments at the doorway that's on site, and the others that may participate if he ever needed time off, is directly associated with Lakes Region Mental Health Clinic. So we find that makes things pretty easy, at least for us, as far as getting those wraparound services or having that initial warm handoff. So they already kind of see someone that has that background immediately.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, Mike.
Yep.
Anybody else on the referral question? Back and forth between the two kinds of peer support agencies?
Go for it, Ken.
Yeah, I had my hand up. I think we were blessed in the Nashua area with the Hearts and Revive, with early development and the brass tacks, rolling out the RCOs. We were kind of involved there and supported you guys developing the RCOs. Revive is on the IDN with us, and we've been working together. I think there's a room for improvement lately, but with the pandemic, that I think that's something that's going to be that Jessica and I can work on in the future. But we share our literature. We share a lot of the same people come and go to both of our centers, which is nice. There's even support on if folks need respite, maybe waiting for a bed to get into a rehab or whatever. Even the front door, the doorway has used us. So I think we were kind of blessed in the Nashua region, working together and not worrying about having lines, but having choices for folks. So I'm open to whatever way. Maybe we can do some presentations to each other. That's usually what we do with other agencies. But like I said, we have their literature, they have our literature, but phone calls have always worked pretty well.
Thanks, Ken. And Susan, did you want to weigh in on this? Susan Seidler?
Yes, thanks. Phone calls, yes, work. And, if somebody wants to stop by the centers, that's great too. I just want to reinforce that peer support, mental health peer support, is voluntary. And if someone presents at the door and we're going to greet them without needing to know what is going on, because that's where our first conversation is. It starts with a conversation. So, and we don't ask for diagnoses for our folks who are members. And if somebody comes into the center, I guess my point is that it's what is behind the reason they're coming in is for that person to share with us. And so that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Susan. And I think that's one of the things that the two kinds of agencies have in common. In neither case is there a fee for service. In neither case is there any kind of requirements to get services there. And in neither case do people focus on the diagnosis or whatever the disease is. It's really focused on the person's desires for whatever kind of recovery or wellness that they're wanting to move toward. So I think those are reasons why it works so well to get to know each other better and do things better. I'm going to jump from here. Ken kind of gave me the nice segue into the next section, which is about consultation with each other. So at this point, we were talking about actually referring a particular member to one of the other kinds of services, but he mentioned things about sharing literature and also about the potential for maybe cross-training, which was one of the questions Eric Moran came up with way back when presentations were being made. So could we talk a little bit about what kind of opportunities there might be to get to understand each other's services better? I know that Susan and Polly shared the kind of training that your staff or volunteers undergo in order to provide the services, but I think the question is more, are there less intensive trainings that might be done across systems to make each other more aware of what exactly it is that you do beyond what you did so well in 15 or 20 minutes? Thoughts?
Well, I know that we do a lot of trainings with the Intentional Peer Support and RAP and some WAM, and we do them in the community. You know, the state requires that we do a community training, and most of the times we have them out in the community or we have it at our centers, even during the week or after hours, so people can get access to it. We offer it to anyone in the community. That could be a way to get folks in there to look at or to train some of the models that we have and that we utilize in our centers. On the other side of the spectrum, we were very fortunate that when they started rolling out the trainings in New Hampshire, why is
the
it
recovery coaching training?
Yeah, why is it eluding me? But the name of it, the one that comes from Connecticut.
Right.
I even seen the trainer on one of the pictures. And so we kind of jumped in on it. We were able to get some free trainings. Even Revive was offering some trainings, gave us some discounts for trainings for recovery coaches working towards CRSWs. So we were able to do some cross training that way for our advantage. So why wouldn't we offer that for the folks at the RCO? But I think that would be one way we could look at it, is doing community trainings and inviting our RCOs to attend those.
So let me ask this a different way. Are there, what kinds of trainings do you think that either as directors, staff, or volunteers working in these centers would be helpful for you to get from the other discipline? What information might you want from them?
Lindy, I was fortunate enough to attend, I think the name of the training was Addictions 101. It was a BDAS training that I went to in Plymouth. That was my first introduction to the science behind addiction. It was extremely helpful for me. And I think, you know, like Ken mentioned, and Hearts is among several of our PSAs who have staff that are have gone through the Recovery Coach Academy or are currently doing so. And for those who are not, though, I think that was a great introduction to some of the differences between mental health and addictions. And I also want to say that I think trauma plays a role all across the board. And if we were to offer one of the community-based trainings that Ken was talking about, I think trauma would be a good place to start. I think it's a reference that we can all understand, maybe in different ways. I think it's, and we have the capacity with our New Hampshire trainers to do a wonderful job on maybe just honing in on that one facet, which, like I said, I think it's a prevalent topic.
Thank you. Others, anybody else? Brett, do you want to say something? Brett Smith?
Sure. So, yeah, so I'm familiar with both co-occurring. So I'm certified in both with the state. And I found that more ethics trainings might be needed to go with the IPS training to strengthen boundaries in the peer services arena. So I think more ethics would be probably conducive to the peer services.
Do you think those are, the ethics would cross both, or that they would be specific to whether you were in a mental health peer support center or a recovery community organization?
I think I am in a mental health arena, so we have to have quite a lot of extensive ethics training, but just being involved with the PSAs and the RCOs, I think, yeah, with peers, I think a lot of individuals that are experiencing either mental health disorders or substance use disorders, we need to strengthen our boundaries, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm seeing people chatting in that they agree with that. And also we've had someone chat in that they agree with the training in trauma. So these may be great opportunities for us to think forward about doing some joint trainings.
Lindy, if I can just chime in here, many people, at least a couple on the call, probably were aware or involved with prior to COVID. I was bringing back sort of like the brass tacks work group to look at some different areas, but ethics boundaries training was one of them identified. Unfortunately, that's kind of at a lull right now, mostly because of this, but hopefully maybe more people knowing that now when that comes out can become involved and spread the word of the folks that are on this call that maybe do know about it. They can extend that because we'd like as much involvement in developing something like that as possible.
That sounds great. And I'm sure we'll have some folks who would be interested in helping with that. Ken, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, the state requires modules for us and recertification, CRSWs, certified peer specialist support, whatever title they're giving us now. But there are certain modules that Ayla was talking to about the brass tacks, looking at improving the quality of that certification and what does it need, what's missing. I think this would be the avenue to look at and looking at the RCO strength and the PSA strength to provide those modules that we need for certification.
That sounds great. And I'm seeing lots of pluses both for the trauma training and for the ethics or boundaries training. And so Ayla, as you pursue that post-COVID, I think maybe there are some other folks who might want to be interested in being involved in those conversations, and we can pull that together.
Yeah, I'll keep in mind to wrap back around with at least the planning committee or somebody in this group or yourself, Lindy, and be able to get that word out, at least the opportunity, the information.
Excellent. And
yeah, Lindy, can I just say something to that? So,
sure.
Yeah, I think that if you go, both Ken and I were on the original planning, and Tom, who is on this call too. So I'm sure if when you pull that together, we can get that disseminated to everybody who might be interested. And I'm looking forward to continuing that work with you guys.
Excellent. So we had one other question here about Liz asking, is there a way to sign up for the RAP training?
I can field that question, Lindy, and Ayla just sent out a chat to everyone that I'm the contact for signing up for the trainings that we provide. And we set our training schedule a year at a time. We actually are doing FY21 tomorrow. And I am happy if folks, I think my contact information will be shared as a presenter, is that correct? With what goes out to folks?
Yes,
today?
we can share your contact information.
Okay,
Yes.
So if anyone is interested, you can send me an email, and just be aware that we haven't planned next year's training yet. I will keep you in the loop though when we're sending out the schedule, and that goes for the intentional peer support trainings as well.
Hi, Susan. This is Cheryl. Could you just talk a little bit about like how those trainings are set up, the length of time they are, and what the requirements like to not attend, but I don't know that the people in the RCOs really know what those trainings entail. So if you could give a little detail on that, it would be great.
Sure.
I'm gonna interrupt here, and,
Oh,
and just looking at the time, I think it's a really good question, Susan. Is that something that you could do a brief write-up on, and we could send it out to everybody?
Absolutely. Yes.
I think that would be more helpful anyway, because then people would have it to take away with them. And so we can, if you can do that and get it back to, Reka? Would you be the, or
Sure.
directly?
Yep, that would work.
Okay.
And then we'll get it out to folks.
Great.
And I just saw Peggy has her hand raised, and then I want to move on to our final conversation for our last 5 minutes or so. Peggy, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, a quick question for the gentleman who said that he was a CRSW and a mental health certified in both. What is that certification for mental health? And how can we get that?
I guess you're talking to me.
I'm not honestly sure. Things are happening so fast with people who's on first. But whoever it was that was talking about having that, it was a gentleman having both those certifications.
Yeah, so the substance use disorder side is a certified recovery support worker,
Right.
and the mental health side is CPS. So you have to first get certified in intentional peer support. And then you have to have the module of WHAM, Whole Health Action Management. No, Ken? Chime in, Ken.
So I think the point is that on the mental health side, there are particular evidence-based practices that you have to get certified in before you can be a CPS. Whereas on the CRSW, it's more of, it is a licensing board certification. So there are particular requirements for that that are not for the particular practices, but are for the overall work. And again, I think that's information we could get out to folks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
On both fronts. So finally, I want to shift us a little bit to talking about any ideas around collaboration. So the question really I'm posing is, are there any opportunities for our two systems to work together on any kinds of projects like community awareness, advocacy? We've already talked a little bit about training or outreach to folks. And does anybody have any great creative ideas around that that would also help us to get to know each other better? All right, there's 74 people here. Somebody has an idea. Eric, do you want to speak up? Eric Moran?
Sure, as much as I don't like the camera thing. I'm sitting here thinking that it would almost be fantastic because the actual work we do is basically the same. We're supporting our guests. So at least until we had the cross-training done, it would almost be neat to have one of my coaches go to our peer center and have one of the peer center people come to my center. And that way, not only are we collaborating, but it just seems to be a good idea for both organizations. Just a thought.
Thanks, Eric. Anyone else?
I definitely would encourage that. I think sharing from my perspective, just from the level that I oversee the peer support agencies and their programming and my understanding of their philosophies, I do think interchanging staff would be a little bit difficult, but in the sense of collaborating so that you have kind of a go-to from each agency that knows each other, like really knows each other face to face and has a relationship, would definitely encourage more smooth facilitation of collaborative services. But I do want to mention that in the peer support agencies in the mental health world, their philosophies are very, very, very strongly rooted in the connection and the relationships that they form. So it's not, it's something that develops over time and that takes a lot of willingness on both behalves. So it's not just about checking boxes or giving them a tool or a service or a website. It's much deeper than that. So I think that would be great that if more RCO staff could just be around and kind of learn a little bit more about what that looks like and how it might be similar or different to their agency.
Okay.
And I would also like to add to that, thank you, Ayla. So when we're talking about the environment within our peer support centers, yes, we have employees who are working, and we're all members, and we're there with lots of other members. I think it would be the biggest value for my community would be more exposure to folks that are their neighbors. They are their fellow members. There's a lot of fear out there. I don't know what it's like from people in the recovery community, not knowing what is this co-occurring, you know, all of that. But a lot of my members are afraid of addiction. You know, some of those same assumptions that have been made for 100 years about people with mental illness. You know, you guys in the recovery community are no stranger to the stigma and all of that. So I think the more we can come together and realize we're talking about human beings and we all have something going on. So let's just get that out there. And Ayla is right. We build trust within our community, and I think most relationships that go deeper than, hey, how are you, do have to have that foundation of trust. So, you know, the sooner we start and the more often we do it, the more comfortable we're going to get. And let's move away from that fear and towards the hope of increasing our community.
Thank you. Kathleen, did you want to speak up and explain what you wrote?
Well, the warm lines, and I did it. It was at Bridges, I believe, in Laconia, very briefly at one of the times in my life. But I would think having some kind of collaborative between the RCOs and the warm lines. I know I heard Polly speak that the RCOs are available 24/7. I know ours is not. I mean, we close and that's it. Which makes me feel really bad for the person out there needing to talk to someone in the evening or you know, whatever, in the middle of the night or up until 11 or 12 at night. Just a thought.
So Kathleen, I would like to ask somebody from one of the recovery centers to answer that question. Could somebody talk about, you know, the availability of people and the telephone supports? Anybody out there?
So we're going to end with this. If somebody can do that in the next 30 seconds.
I think you're going to find it varies center to center, Polly, because like for us, we forward out the line to a cell phone that people can reach us all night long for emergencies.
So important.
So that's going to vary. That's going to vary from center to center, and I'm getting cued that it's time to kind of wrap up. So I think this has been a wonderful session. I really appreciate everybody who has weighed in. I think it's already done a real service in getting us to know each other a little bit, and hopefully this will be the beginning of some more collaborative efforts going forward. So thank you for all your ideas, and I'm going to turn it back over to Reka for wrapping things up.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Lindy said. I think that this has been a fabulous meeting, very productive, and really successful given that it's an all remote meeting with 74 participants. We've done quite a few all remote meetings for our other communities of practice, and I have to say that the level of participation and engagement and just using, you know, all the Zoom features just has been awesome. So it's been a pleasure working with all of you today during this meeting, and we definitely look forward to future meetings, whether that's in person or in, you know, remote. But I think, and hopefully you feel the same way, that it's been a very successful meeting. Lots of good information shared. So just a few things before you sign off. If your name does not appear correctly on your screen, please chat your name and email into the chat before you log off. We do need that information for continuing education purposes as well as for attendance. So if you can do that, that would be awesome. And then 2 contact hours are available for certified recovery support workers, licensed alcohol and drug counselors, and master's level licensed alcohol and drug counselors. We will send a follow-up email, which will include a link to complete the evaluation survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey. We would love to hear your feedback to inform future remote all remote meetings as well as in-person meetings for this community of practice. In addition to that, if you do want continuing education, we do ask that you complete the survey in order to be eligible to receive those credits. You will notice also that our process for issuing certificates has changed. So when you complete the survey and you're done completing all of the questions within the survey, you will be redirected to a Google form. It will ask you for just some basic information, your name, your email, your credentials, that kind of thing. And then automatically a certificate will be emailed to you within 24 hours. If you don't get your certificate within 24 hours, please either reach out to me or Adelaide Murray, and we will be able to problem solve for you and get your certificate to you. And then finally, our next meeting is scheduled for July 29th. We will be in touch as the date gets closer as far as what that agenda might look like, and then also whether the meeting will be in person or via remote. So again, thank you all for joining us for this 2 hours. I hope you learned a lot. We will follow up with all of the resources that were shared via a Q&A document, as well as some other details in regards to trainings and certification, et cetera. So look for that email in the coming days, and we hope you all stay safe, healthy, and happy, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's open a little longer to make sure that I get all the emails that are coming through the chat as you're signing off.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi, Cheryl.
Bye, Cheryl.
Thanks, everybody. Good job.
Thank you.
Bye, Polly.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, are we staying on for a debrief or we're all done?
You can hop off, Cheryl.
Thank
It's been a
you.
long morning.
Yeah, we'll debrief another time. Bye. It was great, though. It worked much better than I thought. So
Nice to
thank
meet you, Ellen.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Bye.
Good job, everybody. It went well. A little mess up on the slides there in the second thing, but that was fast. Sorry.
I think Hannah lost control of the slides at some point.
It was hard. That's why I went so fast. And I was like, is she on this slide or this slide or whatever?
Yeah, she was messaging me I'm not doing that. Polly's gonna hate me, but I don't know how to stop it.
And so when I mess up, then I go faster. So then it was super fast. Yes, I'll make it up in 5 minutes instead of 15.
Sorry, Polly.
It was when I used either the arrows or the clicker, it would do a different thing, and then sometimes it would advance as if it was on a timer. So I think that
Yes, yes, it was at a time. Yeah.